this is our last meeting, and Susan's clapping. And we started back when, May 26th. And if you remember, we all testified how excited we were about planning that night. And I'm just so amazed that you guys have stayed with us. I think it's fabulous. You give up a night every other week out of your summer, and it's been a great summer, to come and help us with this crafting of our vision for the next 20 years. So really appreciate it. And I still say what I did a year and a half ago or a little over a year ago when I went to work on the Missoula district, that's why we live here. Because it's such a great place to live with all the public land around. So here we are, we've had a role in this, and I think I'm hopeful that you all will see some fruits of your labors as we move through the rest of the process. So what we set out to do was we wanted to develop and facilitate this open process where you felt like your voices could be heard, you could have a say in all these different management area allocations and the desired conditions for all these different geographic areas, particularly on the Missoula Ranger District. I hope that we maximized your ability to have your comment and to have some input into this process. And we asked for your input, knowing that what we were getting from you was not decisions or permission, but rather input so that our decision maker could make a very informed decision. And I think we got that in spades, actually, from you all. We've had a lot of discussion and debate and disagreement, and it's been great. In my opinion, it doesn't get a whole lot better than that in this natural resource management stuff. I think we've had very little agreement, but we didn't exactly set out to always have agreement. If the collaborative process were true, and we had a small enough group where we could really work and massage one particular issue, that would have been great, but we didn't have that situation here. So instead at Missoula, unlike some of the other ranger districts, we've had probably an average of 40 people at each of our meetings, and that's a little bit unwieldy for a collaborative process, but we've done a fabulous job with the folks that we've had here and all the different discussions we've had. Come on in. So we've heard about your feelings on natural resource development and management, backcountry management, wilderness management and preservation, recreation opportunities, motorized, non-motorized, the whole gamut. And at this point, what I don't have for you is one singular report to give you tonight in terms of what we've heard and what we will do with the input that we've gotten from you. But rather, I have a bit of a summary that I can give you, and then what we will do with that information. And I'm pretty certain that we've had a pretty fair representation of your feelings. I think you all represent the folks in the Missoula community. I mean, if we look to the Lolo Peak meeting we had on July 21st, I think we had a good representation, even though I think that there were some folks that felt there was one voice heard over another in terms of numbers. It still, in my mind, represented a spectrum of opinions. So let me tell you in general what we've heard from you across the 3 geographic areas on the Missoula Ranger District. And these things are these aren't decisions, they're not agreements, they're just sentiments that we picked up from you. In the Rock Creek area, not a lot of agreement except for the wild and scenic river description. If you all recall, we had a corridor. If you look at your map there, you can see in Rock Creek that there is a segment that follows the drainage all the way up to the head of the drainage. When in our preferred option description, we said it was, I think, 1,000 feet on either side of the drainage. We've changed that based on your input to 1/4 mile on either side of the creek. And that also will apply to the wild and scenic description that's on Lolo Creek as well. Yeah, Phil.
When you say you changed it,
we will change, we thought that was good input for our description in the desired condition write-up. Do you remember that? It was a narrative. And it just made more sense for us to have something a little bit broader than 1,000 feet, So that was it for Rock Creek. The thing, yeah, sir.
a quarter of a mile on each side?
1/4 mile on each side, yeah. Yep. Greater Missoula area, excuse me, the 1.2 recommended wilderness shown on the map north of Gold Creek. Now this was kind of a mapping error. If if you look up in the Gold Creek area on the northeast part of the wilderness, I think it's that northeast part of the wilderness, up by Gold Creek, it should be 2.2 backcountry as opposed to 1.2.
It's the same color as the backcountry. The label just says that.
That's right, it's a labeling thing, and some of you pointed that out to us, so we were glad that you caught that for us. Everybody good with that one?
No, we don't color.
There is, up here, let's see. This would be up here, in the Rattlesnake Wilderness. So you're just to the west of the word Sealy.
So the color is right.
The color's right, the number's wrong.
Go.
And then also in that same area, Shoe Fly Meadows, up in the Rattlesnake area, that's a little pink blurb on your map. Do you see it there? There you go. It's right at it's just west again of where Sealy, the word Sealy is on your map. You all pointed out that's really a botanical area, not a research natural area. So that will be changed to a 3.1 special interest area. So again, that was helpful to us. It's not a huge change, but it was a good catch. The Lolo Creek geographic area. The sentiment we heard from you fairly clearly was to expand 1.2 in the area east of Lantern Ridge to recommended wilderness and expand the research natural area to include most of section 23, which is west of the current research natural area. Again, in the same area, the 2.1 wild and scenic river description, this is just like Rock Creek. We'll say 1/4 mile on either side of the creek instead of 1,000 feet. This discussion is kind of in general happening. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. The 5.1 general forest high and the 4.1 general forest moderate in the Mormon Creek area. So you're looking at the tannish and brownish areas in Mormon Creek. We based on your feedback, we want to change that. It was a mapping error to begin with, and let me say this clear. The forest supervisor did not want to make any changes in the initial preferred option from the status quo because of the debate and controversy about Lolo Peak. So we kept it as the current management areas would be. So you see in there 5.1 and 4.1. It is in fact a pretty significant chunk of winter range there. So we will, based on the input we've heard from you, change that in the preferred option next go to a 3.3 general forest low. And then finally for Lolo Creek geographic area, the 2.2 backcountry north of Lolo Peak will have no exception for a motorized trail. And I understand, I haven't seen this, but understand that there's not access to get there by a motorized vehicle at this point because of year-round closures in that area. So that we will consider that for the preferred option. This is a road, is it the Mill Creek Road? Mill Creek Trail? This would be, excuse me if I can find this. This is north of Lolo Peak. Where's Lolo Peak? It's right in this area here in the 2.2 area. There's a trail that is, we would have listed it as an exception, and we will probably change that so that it'll be an area of non-motorized in that backcountry. There's a road there, but apparently there's no access to it, Tom, because it's a year-round closure. And there are no motorized vehicles able to get in there.
Yeah, that's what that walks like.
Yeah,
Because of
I guess that must be it. It's that slump.
it comes in back from the backside of Lantern Ridge.
Larry, I don't know. I don't know the answer to because I haven't been there. It's just a sentiment that some of you all brought up that you can't get in there anyway. So, and if we were going to designate that as 2.2 non-motorized, we shouldn't have a little segment of trail that you can't get to that is motorized. So, now that's a summary of what we've heard from you all. Let me tell you what we intend to do with that information. Sharon?
We had some agreements as well on other parts of the maps. Those are just changed types of agreements, right? Because
Right.
there were, like in Rock Creek, lots of people agreed on bits and pieces of what was currently managed, or what we were displaying on the maps.
Exactly, which is, yeah, these are things that we.
So those aren't the only sort of agreements.
Right.
Those are just changes from what you see on.
That's right. Yeah, I wasn't going to go into, in general, there were a lot of things that were disagreement and agreement, and sometimes when you, from the Forest Service perspective, if we get violent disagreement, we think maybe we're about right, you know? I mean, it's kind of being a little facetious, but sometimes if you can't get everybody to agree with you, so somewhere in the middle sometimes is the right place to be. There's a lot of things that you all felt you couldn't live with, and a lot of that had to do with some of the recreation opportunities, which I suspect is going to be a good portion of the debate when we get into the general public comment period. So we'll have a lot more kind of intimate discussion about certain areas that people would like to see allocated certain ways. So there were places that you all had some general agreement with us, and then we didn't track those things. If you looked at the geographic area and said, yeah, we think that the proposed wilderness in Rock Creek is a good place to be, I'm not tracking that tonight. That's something that we know that you all have had agreement on.
But it is in the notes.
So what happens with this input here is all of it will go to the planning team, and they are now summarizing and kind of pulling together all the input from all the different ranger districts across the 3-forest zone. So we got the Bitterroot, the Lolo, and the Flathead. All these community meetings that have been happening, the team pulls all these agreements and different notions of consensus and pulling all those things together to determine if there are some things that rise to the top that are kind of no-brainers, that will go into the next preferred option in the next month or two that goes out to the general public for review, 90-day review. And I reckon that'll be sometime in October. Is that right, Deb, you think?
That will be pulling everything together.
Yeah, and then the draft will go out sometime late this fall?
Great.
Okay. Some of the things, like we mentioned late last meeting, some of the things we don't know that we're willing or able or ready to put into the preferred option until we hear more information about it from the general public. I don't know yet what those will be, but I do know that all of the stuff I mentioned tonight will be in that hopper. And so some of those things that the leadership teams will take a look at and say, this one we really like, we think we're going to put it into the preferred option and put it out to the general public, those may be in there. The other option would be to have all of those things listed in a cover letter to the general public and say, these are the things we've heard from the community groups. We're not quite ready yet to put it into the preferred option. We'd like you to consider these as part of the 90-day comment period and review period. Let us know what you think. So I don't have a real sense yet which things will be taken over into the preferred option. So some of these things I just mentioned you may see in the preferred option. Some of them you may see in the cover letter that goes with it. Okay? Two other things. The 2.2 backcountry areas across the zone, and I didn't have this sentiment in Missoula, but across the zone, Flathead, Bitterroot, and the Lolo, there were a lot of debates about the 2.2 being too restrictive for places that are currently motorized, and people felt that we need to give it a little bit more distinction. So there's a proposal on the table for us to consider that would allow 2.2 to be divided up into 2.2A and 2.2B, which would include some areas that would be motorized and some areas that would be non-motorized. And this was a sentiment that came across the zone. So what I think will probably happen with that is, again, it'll be one of those things that come out into probably a cover letter thing to get some information from the general public on that. Okay? And the other would be, we mentioned this last time, 4.1 and 5.1. Those are areas that are moderate and high intensity, timber management, road development, things like that. The sentiment we've heard across the zone is that we ought to take a look at combining those into one timber management development kind of a management area. And what that would do is, because we have to do NEPA, do a site-specific National Environmental Policy Act analysis anyway, we would analyze on a site-specific basis the level of road building, the level of commercial timber production. I don't know, again, if that one's going to go through, but that's another sentiment that we picked up from these community groups. So that one you may or may not see in the preferred option, but you may see it in the cover letter that goes with the draft. So that's the summary of stuff that I have for you that we've heard over the last couple of months. And I wondered, I have a couple other things that I want to visit about tonight, but before we move into those things, I want to know if you all have some thoughts about those things we want to capture. Yeah, Tom?
On the Lolo Creek area where you were going to change the 4.1 to a 3.3, if I recall that meeting, there was only one table that had suggested that. Everybody else had agreed to leave it at a 4.1.
Yeah.
But this thing here you're saying is everything's going to go 3.3.
Are you talking about the winter range in the Mormon Creek area?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is just this area, Tom. Just this little area right here, 5.1.
So it's not this.
No, it's not the larger Lolo Creek area. It would be just over at Mormon Creek. And that is that little chunk of winter range that had we had the latitude before we put out this preferred option, we would have shown it as 3.3 because we've already decided and designated that as winter range. And we would like to manage it for that. So that was, I didn't do a very good job of explaining that at that Lolo Peak meeting, and I kept thinking, well, it's kind of confusing to explain it, so I let it go. And so then it burped out of there at the end of the meeting, and so it ended up being a little confusing.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Other thoughts? Yeah?
I remember a few people were advocating for more 6.1 developed recreation, but overall you didn't think there were enough of them to change your recommendation?
In what particular area?
Lolo Peak and Black Mountain, two things I think.
No, that, excuse me, I didn't look at this as a vote or as a, kind of most of the votes came in this way or that way. I looked at it more as a sentiment, and if it complemented where we were as a district staff, and we would put it back up to the forest leadership team. So yes, you're absolutely right. There were folks that felt that there's an opportunity to have 6.1, the highly developed recreation area, in Lolo Peak and on Black Mountain and a couple other areas. So that's probably still going to be up for debate.
Why?
Yes,
You
Steve?
mean Black Mountain or Blue Mountain?
I think, well, you said Blue Mountain, or Black Mountain.
I
and I
said
didn't-
Black Mountain.
So you may be recalling something that's not right in my mind, but
No, because I was the one who suggested it.
Black Mountain? Okay, yeah.
The only one in the whole room. So is that still under debate if I was the only one out of hundreds?
Everything's still up for debate. What will happen, like Sharon said, is that all the information that came out in these meetings, it will still be included into the public process. So if you want to bring it back up in the general comment period, you can. What my thought is, though, is that you have a sense from what I've said tonight, what we will capture as the sentiment from these meetings, and then it'll go forward either in the preferred option or as part of the list that the public can put some more comment on. And I can see by your face that you're thinking, well, that just doesn't satisfy me.
No, actually, I'm being too devious. What I want to know is how do we kill the 6.1 on Lolo Peak, bury it forever?
Susan?
Going along with that, it was obvious that the majority of people on July 21st agreed that they wanted to see the forest as it was designated or have more wilderness or more 2.2. If it wasn't a vote, then what was the point of it?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a vote, but it was an opportunity for us to hear all the sentiment, and we heard it. It was a big group, and the district staff is in a very similar place with that, and we are, well, that's where if the district, the folks at the district level would like to be able to put forward some changes in that regard, in Lolo Peak area for the forest supervisor and the leadership teams across the 3 zones to consider. So that it will either be in the preferred option as it comes out in the draft, or it will be in that cover letter that says, this is where we're leaning, and we want to have some more comment on it.
So in other words, the meeting didn't show, even though there was I would say 3/4 of the people had strong opinions as to how they wanted to.
Right, that's true,
One
yeah,
direction.
right.
That didn't count for anything?
It counted for a lot, Susan.
Did it?
But I think that what my point is that the forest leadership team and the forest supervisor who will make the decision on that designation may want to hear some more debate on it from the general public. So that is to say that it may be, if it comes out in the draft that this is the preferred option, that doesn't necessarily make it the decision. But remember what we talked about at July 21st as well, that sometimes you get this out there in the preferred option and you still have an opportunity to debate it even so. So if it's in a cover letter that says this is where we're leaning, or if it's in the preferred option, we're still going to have the debate about it. So, but no, I think you all know that that night was a significant night for the Missoula community and for the management of Lolo Peak. So that was very helpful.
Came out with volunteers.
Absolutely. I understand that.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Jean.
Hi.
So other thoughts? Tom?
On the decision, just to let you know, what I run into calling the Stevensville Ranger District when we go camping is some campgrounds, and it's going to be a story here. That ranger only allows you to use generators in that campground from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Every other district is 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. That ranger district made that decision by himself with nobody else. Is this going to just be up to the chief supervisor, as you're saying, to make a decision, and is he the only word? Or is a group going to put all input? I mean, is one person going to say what's going to happen?
Yes. Am I right about this, Bev? That Debbie Austin makes the decision on this?
Correct. What's going to happen is on, right now, all the districts that have had collaborative groups are supposed to pull together where they got agreements. And on the 13th, 4 supervisors are meeting, and then the 14th, 15th, and 16th, each force leadership team on the Bitterroot, Lolo, and Flathead are meeting. And so that is Maggie's opportunity to come with changes on the map that said, in our collaborative group, we had 100% agreement on changing this boundary. And that has a lot of weight. So, like she said, the next version is going to be the weight of the collaborative groups with the Forest Service that goes out to the general public. But if someone disagreed and said, absolutely not, then you don't have consensus 100% agreement, and so it will probably stay the same. But at least Debbie Austin has the information of this is where the majority of the Missoula Collaborative Group was, this is where the Superior Group was, this is where the 9 Mile Group was, and then, yeah, she decides whether or not she wants to make that change.
If it comes, I mean, can she go either way? If the group says, yes, we want it this way, she says, no, I don't, can she say it's not happening just because I'm the boss?
She likely would not do that. Debbie's very responsive to, she could, yeah, she could, she's the boss.
Because, I run into that with that ranger in Stevensville. He says, no. He says, this is the way it's going to be because I said so. And it just, one person should not be able to make a decision over something this big.
Well, that is the value of this process for her, Tom. And I think that that's one of the reasons that she feels very strongly about hearing as much input as she can, and that the July 21st meeting was critical for her. I mean, as soon as the meeting was over, my cell phone rang, how'd it go, what's the general sentiment? That particular meeting was very key, as were all the others, but that one was probably the most well-attended, I think. It was most
I
well-attended.
didn't go to that one, but
Well, it was, yeah, it was
Generally the best.
I knew there was no parking. It was a big one.
Yeah, so what I want to make sure I leave with you all is that, there are some things that the leadership team and the planning team will say, This one, we want to put into the preferred option. And it may be things that didn't necessarily come out of this community process, it may be things that did come out. And the Lolo Peak designation could be in that preferred option for the next go. It may also be that she's just not ready to put that in there yet because she wants to hear some more input. So that's not to put fear in you. And remember, we didn't set it up when we came here that we would make these decisions immediately, that this was part of the process to gather a lot of input so that we could move through this process. So I don't want you to feel nervous or scared. It's just part of the public process. So there was a hand. Yeah, Sharon.
I just wanted to also remind folks, we've said this a few times here, but whatever mapping things we come out with the draft preferred option for the draft plan, there then will be a 90-day public comment period. So even if, you know, we turn the whole Lolo Creek drainage into proposed wilderness, the people of the United States, this is their opportunity now to comment on all of your hard work. So then we take all the, and as well as your opportunity too, you should comment. I mean, that'll be, unless we're able to pull off some kind of public meeting before we come out with the draft plan, this will be your opportunity to see what the Mineral County group did and what happened up in Sealy Lake. So look at it all real close and send comments. So everybody then will have an opportunity, again, 90-day public comment period.
Phil?
Could you remind me again, somewhere early in all this process, you talked about needing to have standing in order to, and was that at the appeals level? Or where was it?
That at the very beginning, we talked about folks that wanted, if they wanted to be here for the litigation level, because there is no appeal level in the categorical exclusion process, which is what this decision will be, then folks needed to be present and have some standing in the process.
So they had to have been a participant signed in with a name and address somewhere in these public meetings.
Yeah, and in the general comment period as well. Am I right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
If you commented to the proposed action, which was a year and a half ago, whenever that was, you have standing. When this goes out to the public for the 90-day comment period, anyone who comments has standing.
As well as attending these meetings.
Oh.
Correct. We have all your names.
On
You mean anybody
Lolo only, you have to attend Flathead or send in a comment to Flathead as well, not standing there?
Correct.
Okay.
so
Because it'll be one planning effort, but 3 different plans.
So I'm sorry I didn't bring my notes from when you described the process, but somewhere down the line, after this 90-day comment period, there's a 30-day something or other period. What is that?
Objection period.
Objection period. That's where you had to have standing, if I'm remembering right.
But that's
Is that
not
right?
this next go-around, that's the final.
That's when the final plan is issued.
Yeah, but that's not the litigation level either. That's just, if you want to file an objection to what's there, you have to have been a participant and have had standing in order to do that.
Right, right.
So anybody who doesn't like what's here and what comes out after the 90-day comment period, if they participated, they still have the opportunity to make an objection.
That's right.
Okay.
And how many times do they have to attend the meetings to? I'm serious.
No, it's just it's a one-shot deal, right? It's,
You mean you only have to show up at one meeting and then you have standing?
You don't have to show up at
You
any
just-
meetings and you can still have standing because the people of the United States have interest in the national forest. And so if someone from New Jersey or Illinois or whatever comments, they have standing.
Tom?
Why is that? I mean, what I've seen in some other instances, people go out and get friends from everywhere else in the states that have no intention of ever coming here and tell them what to tell the people, and they got a say in something that they are not absolutely involved into. I mean, why can't this just be Montana only having a say on it?
National forest, it's not a state forest.
But the people never come here. They don't spend taxes here. They don't do anything.
They
They
spend
shouldn't,
taxes
they
here.
shouldn't have a say in anything that happens in Montana.
This is the beauty of the debate, Tom. I mean, and I really, it's a fresh frustrating reality, but you know, when you look at it from, there's a whole spectrum of folks who feel just as strongly as you do that they can live in Washington DC and never step foot in Montana, but know that maybe their kids can one day. And they could make some kind of effect on that by weighing in at this point. And then on the same hand, there's folks that have grown up here for generations and feel very strongly that they really have the most heartfelt notion about how this land should be managed. And they think about it from just that particular local level, and they all have value. And to me, that's the beauty of the public process. And so it is a frustrating process, but it makes it so much richer for us at the public land manager level. And I know that's not a warm, fuzzy kind of answer.
It sucks.
It does suck. But I'm really comfortable with it because it makes the decision process easier, I think, for us. Because we hear from the broad base of the general public.
And we can comment on New Jersey.
Yeah.
How about only the states that do have national forests?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. So, other comments about these things? And Tom, this is the thing that will keep you motivated to stay involved in the general comment period when it comes out. Right?
And are we notified since we signed the sheet of?
Absolutely. You guys, you know, we know a lot of things about you now.
We knew a lot about the
The good, the bad, the ugly.
That's right. And I know all of the names. So you all will not only probably get a letter that announces this, you'll also hear about it in the paper, and we'll have lots of notice, Bev. Am I right? I don't know how you all will let this be known, but this is not something that's going to go by and you won't notice it. So those are the things that I wanted to visit about in terms of our process and what we've heard, and to me, the stuff that you gave us that was not listed tonight, kind of things that were your sentiments about desired condition and your vision for certain areas, those things are huge. And I didn't encapsulate them at all, but those are things that we carry through, like Rock Creek. You know, Rock Creek, what was it, the Rock Creek meeting? I don't know how many of you all were here that night, but there were 3 or 4 people here that were on the Rock Creek Trust, or I'm not sure what they called it years ago, but Greg Tollefson, a buddy of mine who came that night 20, 30 years ago, was involved in the Rock Creek management and got that thing started. He said 25 years ago, a meeting on Rock Creek would have been hundreds of people, twice as big as the Lolo Peak meeting, and we had maybe 45 people here that night. And what you all helped us to confirm that we didn't talk about this evening was that everybody in the room that night, near as I could tell, was comfortable that that particular roadless area was going to go into recommended wilderness. And even sportsmen who like to ride their ATVs in certain areas, we had folks here that night that said, you know what, I am really comfortable with this because that isn't a piece of country that I really like to take my motorized vehicle in. And then that offers us an opportunity to look for some other options for folks that do want to ride their motorbikes. Larry?
I've got a map here that shows a bunch of roads that are going to be decommissioned here in the future. And I was wondering, are they done the NEPA on these yet, or are they still going to do it?
We did. That is the Upper Lolo Watershed Restoration Project, and it's out in a draft environmental assessment right now, Larry. If you have comment on that, I'd like to hear about it, because I'm going to make that decision at the end of this month.
Okay, well, I'd like to see why they're closing the roads off and
Good.
which roads they are.
Okay, well, you come on in. We'll get that coffee pot going. We'll sit down and
Okay.
talk about it. We'll take a field
He
trip
doesn't
too if you
drink
want
coffee,
to.
remember?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you drink the green tea. I forgot. I'll put the green tea on for you.
See, we know things about you.
It's scary.
That's right. Yeah. Other sentiments about general thoughts, what we did here. I want to make sure you understand that it was huge for us to get the desired condition kind of comments that you look for in that area, across the Missoula district. Great stuff. Yes, sir.
I'm still curious, maybe you're gonna cover this later, is how our district fits in with other ranger districts. Like the Great Burn is one area I'm particularly interested in.
Mhm.
And only a little bit of it is in the Missoula Ranger District.
That's right. You know, I don't know exactly how to summarize that yet. Bev, you may know a little bit, but I think we are all going to collectively know more than we do now in about 2 weeks, when we have a chance to see what overlap there is and what edge mapping might still need to be done, that kind of thing. Bev, you got something to add there?
If you're curious, the notes for the 9 Mile group and the Superior group are on the website. I was at the Superior group last week, and there was not any agreement. But it was a good discussion, and what is amazing to me is to have watched that group from the proposed action where the ranger called Maggie in as a facilitator of that group, where, you know, people just were on their position and weren't coming off, to last week where they're joking and laughing and being respectful to each other. And so, and I have not been involved in the 9 Mile group, so I would have to look at the notes from those groups to see where they were at.
Well, we had a stalemate last night on the 2.2 areas in the 9 Mile district. We had a stalemate, no agreements at all.
On one area.
Yeah.
What about Clearwater Forest?
They're a little bit behind us, and I don't know where they are. I mean, I know where they live on the face of the earth, but I don't know where they are in the process. Do you know, Bev? I just know that they're behind us.
We did have a map of what they were thinking about, and it matched up pretty well. I think probably the biggest contention is on the Idaho Panhandle, where the Idaho side allows snowmobiles. That doesn't match up well with recommended wilderness.
Over on lookout.
So the summary of, in 2 weeks, when everybody from the forest team gets together and looks at everybody, it's going to be in 2 weeks? You're going to know, you're not going to have all this done in 2 weeks. What happens in 2
My team
weeks?
is taking at least another 2 weeks to try and make sense of that. And then all 3 forest leadership teams are meeting the first week of October to finalize agreements and where they want to go. And then we'll have probably a month to have to get, there's 2 processes going on. We're building the draft plan as well as doing analysis to support the plan. So those 2 things are going on concurrently.
And so when does that mesh with talking to the commissioners and Governor Schweitzer and all that?
That particular time frame hasn't been decided yet, which is why we asked Jean to come tonight, because the next thing we're going to do here is have a little discussion about some of the roadless stuff, so that Jean can leave here with some information, and then she can go and work with the commissioners on that process. Larry?
When will the Missoula area get together with OHV groups and do the talks as far as the roads and stuff like 9 Mile is going to do, or are they?
Oh, I'm game, anytime. And we can set up something specific with you all, you know, if you want to do it over a few-week period. It's district by district. So we haven't really had that much specific conversation, have we, relative to that? So we need to do that. And, you know, time.
Because I'd like to know why they're closing off the roads that they're closing off and all this kind of stuff. And I seem to get no answers to the questions I've had.
Okay. Again, you come on in, and we'll do that. We can set it up for the group or just a few folks, whatever.
Sure.
Okay. Beverly?
We had suggested to Gary to do that outside of the forest planning process.
Oh, you did? Okay, outside of this
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Great. That's good. Okay, we'll do the same. I can be just like Gary.
And to be, well, and to do like Superior, 9 Mile, Missoula, you know, together, to look at the big picture.
Okay, so
But
we're
outside
free.
of the forest planning process.
And so the 3 districts would look at, are you talking about a travel planning effort kind of thing?
Something like that, to look at more specific things, but it would be outside of the forest.
Right, just give us a reason for the areas that they're closing off and things like that.
Okay, all right. So some of that now, did both of you agree that you could do this as part of the forest planning process, meaning that whatever you have as an outcome that would go into that, or are you thinking after the forest plan comes out?
After.
Okay,
The
Or
forest
outside
plan,
of it, separate from the forest planning process.
right, the forest plan will not make site-specific
Right.
No,
decisions,
we-
and what they're talking about is exactly that.
right, and that's exactly what, once I'm listening more clearly, I think what you all are saying is you want to engage in a travel planning effort, which would be most effective, Larry, after the forest plan comes out, so you know what allocations are going to be made for certain areas. And then we get to talk in specifics about roads that will be closed or remain open. Okay? But we can meet still in between to talk about things in a general nature. So I don't want you to think you have to wait for 1.5 years to come on in.
Well,
Drink
yeah.
some green tea.
I might forget everything by then.
Okay, yeah, okay. All right, other thoughts? So were there things in this process that you didn't feel you had an opportunity to bring up? Pat?
I kept thinking that there should be buffer zones around areas that were supposed to be isolated. And I kept being, oh, well, we don't worry about that. We don't worry about that. And I kept thinking, well, why not?
Yeah.
And I
So
wasn't getting satisfactory answers from anybody.
I'm sorry, so what is, give me an example. Where was an area
Well,
that you?
if you've got a 1.2 wilderness area that's directly adjacent to a 5.1, it's like a dog, I'm sorry, who doesn't know where the boundary lines are.
Got it, so it seemed to you that it would be too distinct of a
Yes.
transition.
Yes.
Yeah. Sharon, you mentioned earlier you'd be capturing a couple of notes. That particular sentiment we want to make sure we capture. Bev, do you know if that's been echoed in other meetings, the notion of having a
I have not
kind of a
heard
softer transition between management areas?
No.
I go to the Stevensville meetings a lot, because I've been going to all those.
Okay,
Yeah, a buffer zone could go either way, though.
good.
Exactly. Sure.
Right,
Yeah, sure.
okay. Well, thanks for bringing it up. And when we get into the general comment period, that's a place that you can maybe better articulate what your concern is, Pat, because you're right, there were times when we weren't able to capture some of those more specific comments because it was going in a more collective kind of fashion. So I appreciate you bringing it up. Ma'am, did you have a comment
Well,
too?
I honestly remember that in quite a few cases, we suggested changes in order that would result in buffer zones. You know, some of the changes we made, like taking something from, 2.2 or something from a 3.3 and putting it back to a 2.2, or lowering a 5.1 or a 4.1 down because it was near wilderness. And I thought time and again that kept coming up.
Okay, so similar to Pat's
It wasn't
comment
called
that-
buffer zones, it was called, this is a better idea to make a transition area.
Right, okay. So in general, am I capturing this right, that the notion of having a little bit softer transition between the two that have a very distinct change between them, go from 5.1 to 2.2, that's quite a big change.
Yeah, but I heard this gentleman say that the buffer should go the other way.
Either way. Either way.
Okay? Might depend on if you're walking from east to west or west to east.
Really, there's almost no 5.1 on the Missoula Ranger District
That's right. Very little.
Except for that little strip,
that we made go away by Norman Creek.
Yeah, that'll be,
which probably will become 4.1, right?
3.3.
that's the one, it's the winner, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like it.
That's a good
color.
feeling. Yeah.
Bitter.
Yeah.
One of the things I was hoping we'd get to talk about in all the districts and on all the forests, which we haven't talked about, is the way the new planning rule basically got rid of the requirement to maintain viable populations of forest vertebrates, and in light of that, how the forest would meet its NIFLA mandate. mandate to provide for diversity of plant and animals now that that's no longer required.
Do you want me to respond?
I do. I want you to respond to that.
Like with management indicator species from the old plan, go over any of that stuff.
Okay?
They don't go away, they've just changed. Instead of viability, it's now ecosystem diversity, species diversity, and sustainability. And there are three components of sustainability. There's social, economic, as well as ecological. And so the interim directives that came out, when a law or regulation changes, then the agency that implements those has to come up with what we call directives, which are the Forest Service Manual or Handbook. And in Chapter 40 of the interim directives, there's a lot of ways to address ecosystem diversity. It's very clear on threatened and endangered species. There's no change on ESA or T&E species. And now there's a way to look at what we're calling species of concern and species of interest. And the species of concern are usually globally ranked, if you're familiar with that ranking system, G1 through G3, which means they're very habitat specific. There's a whole list of criteria for G ranking. And then species of interest, it's recommended in the directives to include at least G4, G5, state, which is S1, S2, as well as other species of interest. Like now I think the Lolo has elk as a management indicator species. Do we want to bring that forward in the new plan as a species of concern? White bark pine, which grizzly bears are very dependent on, might be a species of interest that we might want to have special desired conditions or objectives or guidelines in how we manage those species of concern and species of interest. Does that answer your question?
Good. Thanks, Bev. Others? Okay, yeah, Howard.
Kind of general questions about the Forest Service relationship with Plum Creek.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if any of your decisions and plans and things like that are kind of slopped over into the Plum Creek timberlands, or are they totally independent and never listen to anything you say, or what is your relationship with them, and how are they fitting in, if at all, with our forest planning process? And I see a lot of checkerboard here in areas that we've all been interested in, and so I'm interested in that particular issue.
In the forest planning process, it's not, they haven't been pulled in specifically, especially not into this kind of community process, but they are a partner with us just like any other agency or corporation or whatnot that has a fairly large chunk of ground that they own. In specific though, when it gets down to like the Upper Lolo watershed restoration plan that Larry showed, they are well connected with us in terms of what our proposals are, because we have co-op agreements on all of the roads that we manage. We share management of, so we share closures, we share costs of maintenance over a period of years. We re-up those agreements on a regular basis. So we aren't necessarily joined at the hip in terms of our management scheme there, but we do cooperate in terms of any kind of new decisions that we might be coming out with. So, Deb, do you have anything more you want to add to that?
Well, there has been a Plum Creek forester at this meeting.
That's right, Dale Kirkwood
Yeah.
has been here, yeah.
And I'm not certain if they have in the other community groups. But as far as at the planning team level and talking to Plum Creek, I don't know.
So if you have a travel plan, are they involved on their roads as part of the travel plan? Or do they just ignore you and close their gates or open their gates as they wish?
No, any of those roads that cross through, just like you're showing on the checkerboard
Yeah.
pieces of ground, those are all, we have to be in agreement as to how we're gonna manage those roads, because we share the management of it. So they would be tied in with us. And again, Howard, though, we're not making those kind of decisions in the forest planning process, so they're not as intimately involved right now. Yeah. But we like them, though. I mean, I don't want you to think we don't like each other.
That's a good point, you know, I just wondered if they even cared whether you liked them or not.
Yeah.
Or if you cared whether they liked you or not.
That's, I think they care. I think they lose sleep over that.
I don't think they do.
I'm with you.
Yeah, Tom?
Coming from another aspect as a hunter here, I found that there is only one road for disabled hunters in the Missoula area, and that's up Elk Meadows.
Okay.
How do they go about getting more of those open for the disabled?
Let's see, I'm gonna take a stab at this, and other folks, Bev and Sharon, if you know more about this, I'm mildly familiar with this only because of other places I've been, Tom, and those situations I am familiar with are, again, site-specific, and generally have been brought forward by a proponent who can say this area meets certain criteria for the type of hunting that I want to do, and then work directly with the ranger district on opening a certain road or a certain area for disabled hunting. And then we, of course, we work with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks on the certain permits that we need to have to make that happen, which you're probably familiar with. So, but that would be the way we would do it, not so much in the forest planning process.
Don't they alternate that from year to year in the areas?
I don't know, Larry. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, when I worked on Sealy Lake, we usually alternated.
That's what we did at Plains too.
Okay. Other things that we didn't get to talk about. All right. Okay, well then, I have one other agenda item to visit with you about, and then we can see where we go. I'm thinking we may have a fairly early night tonight, but somebody mentioned the governor's interest in the roadless areas. And this is relative to the roadless rule that came out. All the governors have been given kind of a request to have some input at their state level on how people feel about the roadless areas. The Missoula County Commission in particular has asked for some feedback from the community about what they think about the roadless areas. And Jean and I talked a couple weeks ago about using tonight as a forum for you all to give some feedback to them, not in a real verbal way, but perhaps in a sticky note kind of way. So I'm thinking that Jean could take this with her. We've got the roadless area map up here. Is it the smaller one, Sharon?
The one on the left.
The one on the left. At the bottom, Sharon's got some notes written, and I don't know what you've said there, Sharon, but essentially we're looking for folks to weigh in on some of your comments. And Jean, what you intend to do is to take that map with you tonight, use it as a basis for developing a format for a meeting that you all can have hosted by the commission that will provide feedback that you can pull together to give to the governor. Am I right?
We did have a meeting with the governor a few weeks ago, and some of you were there. It was very short notice that we knew the governor was coming and wanted to talk to us. In fact, less than 24 hours, so therefore we probably didn't meet our public meeting laws on that meeting. However, some of you have a really good network because the room was packed. So we decided at that time, the governor said that later in October, and he hasn't given us a definite date, and I will try to follow up on that tomorrow and see if they've set a time, that he wanted to hear from commissioners across the state that have roadless areas proposed, or roadless areas there, and some decision needs to be made in their county. He wants us to come and talk to him about it. We felt when we had that meeting, and we did on real short notice get, I think Deb came that day, Deb Austin, had the Forest Service come to listen in, but we thought since this process was already going that we would wait until it was done so that we could take the comments that were already made by people in regard to areas that were roadless since tonight's the last night, we thought, well, maybe it'd be good to just have people put things on a sticky note. We have received some written, some email, some phone comments from folks already, so we're willing to take those. Then we're going to need to pull together some sort of meeting to see if people agree, I guess, on what the roadless areas, what our comment from Missoula County should be. So these are the ones that are on the Lolo. We do have a few on the Flathead, the area that's from the summit, between Sealy Lake and Condon, there's a summit that this side's Lolo and the other side's Flathead. Kathy Barbolito sent me the maps from the Flathead Forest for the Missoula County area. There are 2 small pieces up close to the wilderness in the Missions, and one kind of large area that goes all along the top, basically the tops of the Swan, and butts up to the Bob Marshall Wilderness. So those are the other 2 areas. I'm not sure. You can go on the website. Those of you that are interested probably know where you can go and find the map, or you might already have one. So tonight, if you'd like to put sticky notes on that map, I'll use that as part of our public comment, and then we'll try to make sure we give adequate notice to folks. See if the Missoulian maybe would do a nice, noticeable story beforehand, so that you don't find it on page 29 with a dog food ad or something. So I'm willing to take comment tonight too if you'd like, but it won't be in a public format that I can. I mean, it's not my public format to write things down and have it recorded and that kind of thing, which we record our public meetings. Good. Any comment?
Do we have sticky notes?
Yes.
Yeah, Sharon, you want to explain that?
Yeah, Sharon has a system.
Is that it, Jean?
Sure.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you very much. I have sticky notes. You all have pens. And I thought what I would do, rather than leave it up there because the light isn't all that good, I'm going to move it over to this unoccupied table. For those that are interested, certainly come on around. Some of you maybe could care less or will get involved later. But my suggestion would be, if like 90% of us are interested in doing this, you go in, maybe kind of take a quick peek, grab a sticky note or 2 and go back to your table and write your little note. I've numbered them from 1 to 11. So, if you've got a particular one that you're interested in, you can look at it. Back when, these are all inventory roadless areas. They've been around for a long, long time, since, Rare 1, back when, all of us were about this high. So these have been around for a very long time and generally have not been roaded. They were all looked at during our last go-around of our forest plan. Some of them were allocated to timber management, some of them were just to be managed as roadless areas and various other things. Some of those that were allocated in our current existing or last forest plan, some of them that were allocated to timber management did have timber management occur in them. And you'll be able to tell by looking at them, you'll be able to see where the roadless area boundary is on that map under better light, not necessarily up there. And you'll see that it's now 4.1 or 5.1 or something like that. That's how you'll know it's likely been managed. And so make your comments accordingly. Maybe you would say lop off the piece that is currently being managed as 4.1 that's roaded, or maybe you would say let's close all the roads in there and get it back to the roadless area that it was 20 years ago. Whatever it is, that would be 2 opposite ends of the spectrum that you could suggest. Or maybe you don't give a rip about roadless area number 5 up there, and you just want to write comments about 3, 9, and 10, whatever. Okay? So I'm going to pull it off and put it on that table back there. Yes?
I have kind of a 2-part question. On the Bitterroot, they gave us an overlay of the inventory roadless areas, and they more or less, almost exactly, correspond to the 1.2 and 2.2 proposals on the map. My first question, is that about the case, the same on the Missoula district? And my second question tied into that is, how will what comes out of the roadless area comment interplay with the plan? Or is that too much for 1 hour?
No, the first part of your question, is the bulk of these are 1.2 and 2.2. There is, some of them were managed, like I said though, so there's at least a couple areas up there that are 4.1. The second part is long and convoluted and depends on what the county, all of you and Governor Schweitzer come up with. Because the roadless areas, my understanding under the new roadless rule, and you may have a better feel for it, Gene, the governors of the individual states can petition for how they'd like to see a roadless area managed or all the roadless areas in their state or whatever it is they want to petition. They petition to the Secretary of Agriculture.
But doesn't he take that, some of the standards from you folks that you suggest and put in that petition?
From the county commissioners, I think.
He asked the commissioners to comment on behalf of our constituents.
The governor asked.
With the new roadless rule that came out in May sometime, I don't have the date. And if you're interested in it, you know, I can give you a website address, I think. Might be a little fuzzy, but I can get you a website address and you can go learn all about the roadless rule.
But the governors are gonna submit their comments to Ray, not to Gail Kimball or the supervisors, is that what you're saying?
Yes, to the secretary, not to Mark Ray, but to the Secretary of Agriculture.
If any of you would like to have your name on the list to make sure you're notified of it in case the Missoulian doesn't do a nice big story, you can email the commission and we could make a listserv to make sure that you, and if you just go to the website, it might be the easiest way to connect to us, which is www.co.missoula.mt.us. Then you can go down the directory and find the commission. And you don't have to do all three of us, you can just do one and we'll pass it on to the secretary. Thank God for secretaries.
So what we'll do is, if folks want to take a few minutes to do that, it might feel a little loose, but we'll just mark up that map and we'll roll it up and give it to Jean, and then we'll reconvene for a few minutes, okay? Alrighty, and if you just want to grab a glass of water and you don't really feel like coming, that's fine.
So here's an example of, like this Garden Point one. See, it's brown. So the roadless, this isn't the best map, but the roadless areas are these hatched areas. So this brown one, this is all likely, I would assume, been harvested. Or, you know, maybe not all, but it's had some good management in there. Most of these blue areas are going to be 2.2.
Did you mean black maps?
So badly logged up, why not turn it into a recreation close to town? Lots of roads, lots of people can just make a nice addition to Blue Mountain.
You go through elk habitat and get to
There's elk on Blue Mountain,
Yes, it will trump.
there's the elk up there.
All right. You know, there's a whole other
There's
piece
elk
of
around there.
I'd love to see the
We can't just start saying we can't recreate wherever there's elk.
Right.
Yeah.
We're
I just
ready?
numbered them, they were in alphabetical order.
Sharon, are we all set? Did we get, oh my goodness, look at the sticky notes. Yeah.
It's colorful, very fun. This is the
Okay, so you guys, I think we may have lost a few folks. I hate to do that.
GIS query.
But see, there was a.
How we doing? Jean? Yeah. Are you feeling comfortable with what you got there?
Yeah, it looks like a good list.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
That is great. Thanks you all for providing that input to the county. I'm feeling that this is as far as we were needing to go tonight. Are there other things that people want to mention? Any final testimonials? Any last opportunity to do any serious bonding with each other?
I would just say that the whole process has been very interesting.
It has been interesting, hasn't
I
it?
didn't think it was really going to work at first,
Yeah.
but I think over the time that we've been doing it, a lot of
got some little slivers there.
Yeah, yeah, did you guys all hear what
I think you've done
Steve
an
said?
outstanding job, and everybody else in your group has done a great job.
Well, thank you. We did as good a job as we could. You all made it possible for us. It was far easier having everybody come to the table and helping us through it, so thank you. Yeah. Phil?
I would echo that. The thought that has been in my mind about this whole business is, well, is this a fair sampling of the population showing up at these meetings? And if I were to put myself in your shoes, I don't know what else could be done to get people to come. Short of going out to each constituent group and paying them and saying, we need you, we're going to give you $100 to show up. I think the forest has made the most reasonable effort I've seen, maybe ever, to try to get people from all spectrums to come. And you haven't recruited any particular segment, but I've just really tried hard to make it open for anybody to show up. And because of that openness, the people that are here, I think, somewhat fairly represents the range of interest that's out there. You know, if you'd recruited certain sites to show up, then I'd be more doubtful.
Right. Well, that's good. I appreciate that, because we did try to make it as broad as we could, and thankfully, people showed up, you know, so that's good. Yeah. Other thoughts? Yeah.
I thought it's a tribute to how well you developed your format with the Lolo peak meeting, where there were so many people and it went so well that, you know, you did a good job setting up your methods and your formats.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a good challenge, but that's a collective effort by a lot of folks to make that happen. Yeah, Howard?
Thank you for the location. This is so much nicer than the materials testing.
Oh my God. Oh, for those of you who have not been there, that's quite a place. Yeah.
Spent a lot of time there.
That, I know you did, Steve. That is stepping back in time over there. Thank you for that, Howard. Yeah, this is far better. So, and we ended up getting a good deal from the DoubleTree, so this worked out really well. So really appreciate their help. So, any other comments at all?
Do you have a clue, even a rough idea of when the draft is going to be out?
Beth, what do you think?
We are being held to a very tight schedule, and so it will be November.
First part.
I have no idea.
By November 30th. Ish.
December 20th.
We always have the date right here on it.
That's good. Well, on behalf of the Missoula Ranger District and all the staff that helped, and Sharon that's been here at every meeting to help us out, and Beverly and Chuck, that you guys were so gracious to help us from the planning perspective. This has been invaluable to us, and I know the other districts feel the same way, that folks who took time out of their busy lives to come and help us with this, it's been fabulous. So I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you. And we don't have to be done. If there's a reason for us to hook up sometime in the fall and have another meeting, and we want to do that, that's by all means we can do that. We will have some open houses during that general comment period, so there will be an opportunity to hear what other people are saying about it, probably in a larger format. And so stay tuned. We'll hear about it through the media probably. And I'd appreciate your comments. I trust you guys, so if you have some thoughts for me to do things a little bit better, you see me tripping up, I'd love to hear that. So really appreciate folks coming. Thanks again, travel safe, and we'll see you next time.
But we don't have